Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to do a bit of a comparison between light and dark characters. The reason why I'm doing this is I actually got asked quite a few questions recently about various different light and dark characters. For example, some people were curious about Gemini Saga and whether he is a good character. There were also questions about, what kind of character should you pick in the Star Wheel? Is it worth to choose a light and dark character there? And if so, which one? Should we save up the resources for future nights, etc.? And of course, we just had Siren Sorrento released recently in the game. Normally, I would do a bit of a deep dive in the character to tell you whether he's worth investing or not. But because I have so many questions asked on this topic altogether, I actually decided to just do an in-depth comparison between all of the different light and dark characters here. Now, this is not a tier list of any kind because in my head, light and dark characters are actually all pretty strong. They are mainly used in slightly different ways, and that's why I kind of have mapped it across this kind of like coordination here, which I'll talk about a bit more in depth later on. But also something else to bear in mind is that it's very costly to build up a light and dark character. Vast majority of the characters here actually needs probably level 30 armor and also all 9 destiny point for constellation. And depending on whether you're free to pay or have a bit of money at hand, etc. Uh, Either way, it's going to be really expensive to build up the characters. So you may actually decide to only choose one or two light and dark characters at most in your team. I'll probably recommend definitely no more than three light and dark characters. I think any more than that is probably just going to be a bit of a waste, and you'd be much better off concentrating on just a few good characters. For free to plays, I'll probably suggest only one or two. There's no need to really go all out. And also, of course, in future there may be even better knights to be released. So definitely don't splash out all of your resources on the ones currently available. Okay, so now let's talk about kind of how I plan to do the comparison. So there are in my head four main different stages or four different game modes, or four different type of tactics that you want to employ in this game. There's the story map where you kind of just clear out the maps one by one, try to level up, unlock more resources, etc. Progress with the story. There is, of course, the boss battle. So that could be against the guild, that could be against the world, or that could be also against certain events such as Mermaid Thetis or Pisces Aphrodite, etc. And then, of course, we have PvP. Now, PvP are actually split out into two different directions. So you have both whether some characters are good at in a defensive position and whether you are good in attacking in PvP. And the main difference here is for attacking PvP, you have the luxury of choosing your formation depending on how the opponent line up. Whereas for defensive PvP, you really have to go in blind and try to go for a formation which is not so much dependent on the positioning of your knights, etc. So it's actually very different, as certain knights are more suited to attack versus defense, etc. Uh, Most of the cases, you will find a knight normally excel in one or maybe two or three different directions or different game modes, which is why I decided, you know what, let's just do a grid and kind of map it out. And the way to interpret this grid is, for example, here I have God Close Seiya here. He is very good at attacking PvP and also in boss battle. That is not to say he's bad in story map, but it's just that story map is probably not one of the stages for the game mode that he will shine the most. You normally would want to utilize God Close Sensei in boss battles and attacking PvP. You do sometimes get some all-rounders such as Poseidon who can actually be pretty much used in every single game mode, and that's why Poseidon is such a good character. I'll talk once again a bit more about him later on. But I am really just trying to highlight the biggest game modes where the character will shine the most. Um, so without further ado, let's just kind of talk about all of the knights one by one. And of course, when you actually look at each of the quadrant, you kind of interpret it as, out of all the knights here, for example, God's Close Saint Seiya is the one furthest away from the center, so he is probably gonna outclass both your the other two knights in this quadrant who are a bit more closer to the center. So the further away you are from the center, that normally means the better you are at doing certain jobs, comparatively. All right, so I think let's start off with Virgo Shaka. Shaka, I put at the center because he is a character you probably wouldn't use anywhere at all. Um, this is mainly because he's locked under these VIP, so your Shaka is unlikely to be very high level at all. So that severely limits how strong he can actually get. Not because he's a bad character, purely because he is just going to be so much on the level compared to everyone. Now let's talk about Sorrento. Sorrento to me is an okay character. It's probably not one of the best in as you can see in this kind of map right now. He is mostly for defensive PvP. He's definitely not for boss battle. He's probably not for story maps either, not too much. He's mostly just for PvP, and he's slightly better at defensive than attacking. The main thing with Saru and Sorrento is that you really want to pair him up in a certain way so that he can effectively neutralize your opponent's Cosmo and make them unable to release any ultimate, etc. at all. If Silent Sorrento managed to launch his ultimate, then none of the opponents can release their ultimate, even if they're fully charged up with full Cosmo. And also, he has this enchanting ability where he can make sure the opponent can't gain any Cosmo. And also, if you have his constellation, armor, etc. unlocked, he can also gain the Cosmo that the enchanted opponent would have gained. So that basically means he would then be ready to fire his ultimate again, and then the opponent wouldn't be able to release their ultimate, etc. So it gets into a really strong cycle where you severely delay how much your opponent can actually release their ultimate and how much they can actually do with their customer. Now, this is obviously um, he is not an attacker. That's why he's not good for boss battle. He is not going to be that good for story map because in story maps the opponents are so much higher level than you. The opponents can only just beat you down with normal attacks. To be honest, they don't even need to release ultimate. So that's why, to be honest, he's not even that good in story maps. He needs to be in PvP and he's slightly better in defensive purely because you're trying to stall the opponent from releasing the ultimate. So you could even wait for the timer to be up, and if you are not being defeated, then you actually count as won that defensive battle. So that's kind of the reason why Sorrento up here, but comparatively, he's probably one of the weaker characters here. Next, we have Pandora. Pandora is quite interesting in the sense that she is able to both heal and also do quite a fair amount of damage. Now, she is once again a support character, so you normally want to place her in uh, your defensive position rather than try to use it for some kind of positioning in your attacks. She gets stronger as the battle goes on because she has this ability, kind of like a passive ability, where all the characters except for her will lose health per second as the battle goes on. So once again, the idea behind Pandora is you want to play kind of a stalling game. Try to make the game battle go as long as possible. The longer you stay in the battle, the weaker your opponents becomes. Obviously, your knights also get weaker, but it doesn't matter too much because Pandora doesn't lose health per second. So as the battle goes on, you are definitely getting more and more advantage over your opponent. So that's why she's normally for defensive PvP. Not that useful for story map once again because in story map the battle tend to finish quite quickly because the opponent is just so much higher level than you. So you don't normally want to play Pandora or any kind of stalling game in story maps. To be honest, she can be somewhat useful in boss battle because she reduces how much healing the opponent is able to get. Um, so that is very useful mainly just for Mermaid Tetris. So the event boss Mermaid Tetris to prevent how much Tetris can heal up. So that's why I kind of put her slightly towards the boss one. But once again, she's kind of more in the center, kind of like all around there except for story map. Now, the reason why I put Pandora in the boss is like I said, she can prevent that heal or reduce the effect healing, and that's also why I kind of also have Evil Sega on the bottom half of this map because Evil Sega have the same ability to prevent Momotetus from healing in the event boss. So that's kind of where I would place Evil Sega. Now, Evil Sega is not well, Evil Sega is definitely not for defensive PvP because he's very easy to be countered. He's not so great in story map later on either because once again the opponents are so much higher level than you. The main idea behind Evil Sega is try to close out the game as soon as possible. Now because the opponents are so much higher level than you, it's very hard for Evil Sega to actually do significant enough damage at the start of the battle, and as the battle goes on, he gets a lot weaker. So that's why you probably don't see Evil Sega shine as much later on in the story map. So that's why I kind of have Evil Sega here. Not still a good character, I would definitely say, but slightly less used in the future. Then we have one of the Hades Knights, Rhadamanthys. Now, Rhadamanthys is quite interesting because Rhadamanthys basically is an assassin who gets a lot of attack and also high critical damage. And the more critical damage he lands, the stronger he gets. And that makes him really powerful in boss battle because obviously in boss battle you'll be keep hitting on. So basically, I think he gets a higher critical damage every single time he attacks. He launches a normal attack in boss battle, you'll be launching normal attacks a lot of times. So basically, that means you get critical boost all of the time. So that makes him really strong in boss battle. Because he's single target knights are generally quite weak in story maps because even if you wipe out one person with your ultima, you still need to do a lot more uh, damage in order to charge up to the next ultima, etc. To in order to take out the next opponent in story map, so it's actually quite difficult. So that's why I wouldn't recommend him in any of the story maps, etc. Also, once again, being an assassin, he's very easy to be singled out in PvP. So you really it's only going to play him when you're actually able to choose your positioning. So that's why he's kind of under the attacking PvP section. Um, I think basically if you have to compare him against Evil Sega, I kind of view them as the same. Evil Sega just do a bit of more damage, AoE damage to everyone in the opponent's team, whereas Rhadamanthys do a single target attack. So they are kind of on the same level to me. Now let's finish off with the last knight in this quadrant, which is got close Senseiya. Uh, Absolutely amazing character, one of the best characters for sure. He is very good in attacking PvP because one of his skill basically locks on onto a character at the start of the battle, force them into kind of a duel where they just hit each other with normal attack. So that's very good because you can use this to target certain characters such as Sagittarius Seiya. Now Sagittarius Seiya, if you don't counter him, he will just release an open attack to knock everyone down and start a battle, interrupt them, etc. However, with Got Close Senseiya, you are able to then lock onto him and force the opponent Sagittarius Seiya into a duel. So effectively neutralize that character. And even though it's a duel where you just exchange normal attacks, he do get kind of like attacking speed buffed, etc. Doing that duel. So normally you would end up that duel in the winning hand. So that's why he's very good in attacking PvP when you can choose your positioning in order to decide who you're gonna attack. Now he also have a passive, which is that he gets higher damage with each attack, and that's why he is also very good in boss battle because he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. All of his attack is single target, so he's like perfect for boss battle as well. Deal probably one of the highest damage. His ultimate, I believe, can deal up to 800% of his attack, so that's just bonkers. Absolutely one of the best character for boss battles in the future. Now, you might think, to be able to choose positioning, to lock on to a character, that sounds pretty good in story maps, etc. However, the thing with story map is that you are forcing your god Seiya into a one-on-one battle, into a duel with your opponent. And in map stages, the opponent is always higher level than you, much higher level than you. So you are not actually able to come out of that battle a lot of time winning. And sometimes you actually, yes, you are able to lock onto a character, but your God Claw Seiya would actually probably be defeated in that duel, and then you end up going into the rest of the battle 4 against 5. So that's why he may be able to have some plays in story map, but he's definitely not one of the best candidates. If you actually want the ability to lock on onto a target and then to prevent them from using their opening attacks or whatever, Sea Dragon Cannon is actually a much better choice, and that's why I kind of put Sea Dragon Cannon into this kind of story map attacking PvP section. Now, Sea Dragon Cannon is very good because he is able to just confuse or control an enemy at the start of battle. So that's very good. He is able to do that at a 5 star, so he doesn't even need any high close or high constellation in order to do that. So that makes him very good for a budget build as well. So that's why I'm gonna put Sea Dragon Cannon here in kind of this position. Then next we have Gemini Cannon. Gemini Cannon is very different to Sea Dragon Cannon, but kind of falls in the same quadrant. The main thing with Gemini Cannon is that you want to link up your opponents together so that your assassin knight, such as your Sagittarius, is able to deal a lot of damage and kind of win the battle through a slightly different tactic. Uh, that is very much, pretty much, he's definitely not going to be played in any boss battles. Oops, sorry. He's definitely not going to be played in any boss battles. That's why I definitely have him up in this quadrant. He can have plays in story map in order to try to attack or clear the map with an assassinate, and that can possibly also see some plays in PvP. But overall, he's an okay character, but nothing too stand out. Um, in fact, I would probably think he's kind of almost the same level as your Evil Saga, so kind of in the same band. Okay, now let's moving on to some of the other quadrant. Here we have three knights, which I kind of all view as equal to each other. We have Athena, we have Gemini Saga, and we also have Hypnos. Um, Now they are all very good in story map because they have both some kind of like quite heavy attacking dealing, but also have a bit of a sustain to make sure they're actually not too fragile and just be wiped out in the story straight away. They're also very good defensively because they all of their skills are not required by any kind of positioning, so that makes them very good when you have to set up your formation in order to be able to deal with anything your opponent throws at you. Now, Athena and Hypnos are slightly more supporting knights. Hypnos is very good in the sense that he is able to deal out, well, not deal, he's able to almost like reduce your enemy's attacking power for the first few seconds of the game or of the battle, and that's very useful in story map because a lot of times in the story map, the main thing is your knights are not able to survive long enough to even release your ultimate. So Hypnos is very good in story map for that reason. He's able to ensure your knights actually live long enough in order to actually release the ultimate and try to turn the battle around. So that's why he's very good. He's also good for that reason in defensive PvP because a lot of knights release opening attacks, for example, Sagittarius, etc. And Hypnos is able to actually then effectively neutralize how much damage you will be taking at the start. So that really helps a lot in defensive PvP. Now you have Athena, who's kind of on the opposite end. So Athena does have a bit of help at the start of battle as well. But the main thing that Athena really is able to do is that whenever she get hit with critical damage, she kind of put up a shield for everyone. So that basically makes her really strong for a long battle. So that kind of makes her slightly less useful in story map because it doesn't really provide enough survivability at the start for you to live long enough. But still, it's kind of more in that defensive PvP side where you don't need to worry too much about positioning and really helps a long way to stall out the battle. And once again, you can even go for the route of making sure your opponent doesn't wipe you out in the 2 minute mark and then kind of win by default. And then we have Gemini Saga. Gemini Saga is also very good. It's kind of a blend between the two. He doesn't provide any support, but he once again gets stronger as the battle goes on, and that makes him more useful in defensive PvP once again. He is also able to vanish into another dimension, so that helps a lot once again defensively. And also because he has this ability to launch a massive meteorite 14 seconds into the game to deal half of everyone's HP at the time. That makes him really offensive well, and you can use him to clear a lot of the story maps as well. Because normally it'd be quite hard for you to take out so much damage on such a high level opponent, but with Gemini Saga, you are able to do that a 50% cut by just through your skill, and that helps a long way in order trying to clear maps. So that's why Gemini Saga is also in this section. I consider all three of them to be equal, so you really depend on what you want out of them. Okay, for the last two knights we have Poseidon and also we have Thanatos. So let's start off with Thanatos first. Thanatos has a really interesting ability where he does helps, he does damage, but the damage he deal is actually dependent on how much uh, it's actually on the maximum HP limit the opponent knight have. So let's say you start off with an opponent with, I don't know, let's say 100 HP. Normally, let's say you do attack, you do 20 damage to someone, then that opponent's at 80 HP, but his full HP is still would have been at 100. So let's say if they have a healer, they would be able to heal the opponent back up to 100. However, what Thanatos does is his skill doesn't just do direct damage. It also delete the maximum HP limit the opponent have. So his attack will be able to actually delete the opponent's HP maximum HP limit from 100 to 80 as well. So now the opponent is at 80 HP limit and also with only 80 HP. So even if they have a healer, they will never be able to go above 80 ever again because the maximum HP limit has already been deleted by Thanatos. So that makes him very good. He is definitely more suited for boss battle because of this. He also have a skill where whenever the boss is so whenever the opponent is at a higher HP percentage than himself, he gets increased critical rate and damage, etc. Now, I don't actually know how deleting a boss HP would work, but I think it probably does work to some effect, similar to how Scorpion Mirror does with the instant death, etc. So that's why I kind of think he is definitely in kind of this boss area rather than in story maps. In story maps, yes, you can delete the opponent's maximum HP, but once again, in story map, a lot of time you're just too fragile, so they don't actually need that high HP. They would just be able to wipe you out with their normal attack. So it doesn't really quite work in story maps, in my opinion, for him. Now, in I put him in kind of defensive rather than attack, but to be honest, he can be anywhere on the scale. He is okay-ish on PvP, I think. He is not too. Actually, no, I still think he's slightly better in defensive PvP because he also have another passive skill, which is the first time he's been killed off. He doesn't actually die straight away. He's able to like kind of linger around in the battlefield for a bit longer, and that does help in defensive PvP where you kind of just want to make sure the battle drags out slightly longer so the opponent doesn't wipe you out in one go. So yeah, I still think like even in the PvP formation wise, he's more suited to a defense oriented team. Now, next we have Poseidon. Poseidon is probably the one character here who is literally suited for every single scenario in story map, in defensive and attack PvP, and in boss battles. He's just an OP character, full stop. You probably already seen videos on YouTube of how his skill kits, etc. He's able to reflect everyone's damage for the first few seconds, so that's why it makes him really good for defensive PvP. He's also good in attacking PvP because well that's just an OP skill. In all honesty, he's also good in story map because story map, yes, the opponent have really high normal attack, but he's immune to all damage and reflect them, so he's good there. Also good in boss battle because he gets stronger as he gains more Cosmo, and that's very important in boss battle when the battle lasts for the full uh 90 seconds or 120 seconds. I can't remember now. But he definitely gets stronger as well. So he's actually suited for boss battle as well. He's just a really strong all rounder. But if I have to pick out of all of them, I think he's probably slightly more suited. Definitely more suited to defensive PvP. But he can definitely be used in every single game mode in there. Now, I kind of done a quick whiz around every single character, what are they useful, etc., and why I put them in all of them. Now, to answer the question of which knight should I pick as my light and dark character, if I can only pick one or two, I think the honest question, the honest answer here is that what game mode do you really want to succeed in? If I really want to deal the highest amount of damage, then I would probably, in boss battles, etc., then I'll probably pick some of the knights in the bottom half of this one here. If I want to clear out as much maps as I want, then I'll probably want to pick the top half. If you really want to excel in PvP, you may then want to choose some characters who are good defensively or attack offensively, etc. And also, it really depends on the rest of your knights as well. For example, I may really want to do a lot of damage in boss battles. However, I'll already have, Virgo Shun, I already have my Sagittarius, etc. They all do high amount of damage in boss battles. So even if I get God Close Seiya, uh, yes, he is great in boss battle, but how much incremental benefit am I getting there? So that may actually sway your decision in terms of whether you want to pick him or not. Because remember, in boss battle, you can only bring 5 knights. If you already have 5 really strong attackers, do you really need someone else who would be able to deal a lot of damage to the boss? So that's something you have to consider. And likewise, you also depend on information. For example, if I already have a really, really strong defensive PvP team, then maybe the area I want to improve on is not so much something in this area, but something which I can then actually use in other game modes, etc. So depending on the rest of your box and how you plan to use the other characters, you really have to decide which character is then able to bring you the most incremental benefit. Now, as a rule of thumb, you kind of just pick the knights who would be able to excel in the game modes that you really want to win, and also that currently you don't really have many good choices, and therefore this would bring you a huge incremental benefit. But also, if you do actually interpret this grid as a whole, I would recommend you to choose knights which are a bit more on the outside of this map, because anyone who's more on the inside is kind of overshadowed by someone else. So, if I have to pick out of all of the, in fact, I don't think I will pick anyone from here because yes, you have Sea Dragon, who's probably the best one in this quadrant, but you can build him really budgetly. So I probably wouldn't recommend going too much resource into Sea Dragon. You can actually focus your resource into one of the other knights. Um, you know, I wouldn't pick Evil Saga or Rhadamanthys because in my opinion, God say I just completely outclass them. I definitely wouldn't pick Sorrento or Pandora, even though they are good characters. I don't think they are unique enough or they shine enough to really worth, becoming your first one or two light and dark character. Um, and for this quadrant, all three of them are equal to me. Here, I'll probably recommend Poseidon over Thanatos purely because Poseidon can actually be used in every single um, game mode, so that's also very useful to have that. Now, one thing with Poseidon I do want to call out though is Poseidon's main Poseidon have two main uh, game mechanics. One is that he gets a lot stronger with his as he gains more custom, etc. But he also have a really strong skill, which is that ability where he's immune at the start of battle and reflect all of the damages out. Now, that skill is you are able to use that skill without any clothes or constellation. So in some sense, he potentially can be built fairly budgetly as well. So if that is also in your consideration, you may even want to consider, okay, should I actually want to build Poseidon in a slightly budget format? Yes, you are not getting the most out of this character, but at least he's still playable in certain situations, and then therefore you're able to divert the rest of your resources in something else here. So, that's also something to consider is that how much resource you need to really pump out into each of those characters to get the most out of them. What at least to get them to behave in the way you want them to behave. So, all of these considerations is something you have to bear in mind as you decide to choose which light and dark characters you want. Now, I know I kind of went a long way talking about all of them and didn't really give a direct answer, but that's really the way I interpret this. All of the knights head, they are definitely all good in their own ways, and it's really just about picking the knight that is able to bring will give you the most incremental benefit, and that decision really can only be made by yourself. So, take some thought about exactly what game mode you want to excel in, what kind of knights you already have at doing certain jobs, and then pick the knight that you believe would be able to give you the most benefit. And that's how I think you should pick your next or your first light and dark character.